before I started in entrepreneurship and developed a business that now makes me over $200,000 per month, and develop an agency services for real estate investors and wholesalers, and now I recruit people for them too. I used to be an engineer. So I graduated from engineering, and I used to work in a company called Fiat Chrysler Automotive. Before that, I worked in a company called Magna, and by working in engineering companies and working as a product designer or product engineer or engineer project manager, I learned how to create specific processes and systems that ultimately is going to help you develop a process in your company, such as a very simple SOP. And a lot of people actually just fail at doing this because they don't know how to create a system in their company to then delegate it properly to their employees. I'm gonna teach you exactly how it's done. So right here, I have an example here of a SOP of creating and optimizing processes and systems. Here, I want you to take a look at it real quick here. So this is just a Google Doc. I'm using a Google Doc, and as you can notice, one of the biggest things is that I use really good naming conventions, or I name it really well. A lot of people don't even know how to name properly documents and things like that. Again, they can never find it, or people can never see exactly what it's all about. So this is just one example of how to create and optimize processes and systems. Inside of this SOP, there's other resources such as the template of an SOP, how to create an SOP. So there's an SOP for an SOP. But the reason why I created this is because I want people to learn how to create a standardized process. Okay? So for example, creating and optimizing processes. The very first thing that you have to know and that you gotta do is that number one, you have to involve all your employees that are in a specific process in your company. So you involve everyone who actually does the work in the mapping. So that's the first one. As you can see here, the SOP is just a tutorial that usually could have a video right at top, and it has your company brand and a title that is specific. If you don't write specific titles of what it does and what it does for your team members, they're not going to understand it. So then you want to write a tutorial or a checklist of step-by-step thing that you gotta do. So the second thing is, for example, identifying process start and end activities. So you have to know exactly, kind of paint a roadmap of exactly what you're going to do for that specific process. So if it is, for example, how to send an email to a client that is waiting for the expectations. Well, you can automate that, but let's say you're doing it manually, right? So the first thing is you're going to open up Gmail. The second thing is that you're going to open up the plus button and just start an email draft. The third thing is that you want to go to the bank of lead contacts information and grab your client's email that you're going to send an email. The third thing is you're going to copy and paste it and now go to the Gmail and paste it inside of the sender, right? Then you're going to go and grab templates of subject lines or headlines of that type of email, and you're going to create a subject line. If you know copywriting, you're going to create a headline that is actually catchy in order to welcome a client or tell the client about the expectations or make the email readable. So this is just very example. As you can notice, I actually told you a few steps on how to start and sending an email. The end activity would be to send the email and potentially notify the team that you have sent the email or do something else, right? So start to end activities. Number 3 is identify process objective and inputs and outputs. So what's the objective? If you don't know exactly what you want to get out of something, you can't really explain it. Everyone have to have some sort of North Star for a specific process. So if you don't put the objective right in here where it actually explains what you're trying to accomplish, people are gonna have a hard time understanding it. And then inputs and outputs. Inputs, it could be resources, it could be tools, it could be templates, it could be things that you gotta have beforehand. So it could be checklists, it could be other documents, it could be a folder, it could be a list of leads, it could be access with a password, it could be a person, right? So all these things that you ultimately will need, and the things that you need to input in order to generate some sort of output. Oh, so here we're talking about clicking, we're talking here about going over or hovering something, double clicking, opening. Just imagine McDonald's, how perfect their system is. Imagine if you go to KFC and they don't make your chicken in a matter of 5 minutes. How weird would that be? Maybe they might take a little bit longer if there's a lot of people. But it's hard for McDonald's not to deliver your order in less than 5 minutes. And sometimes in less than 2 minutes. But why is that? Because McDonald's have standardized processes and systems inside of their business that makes them very efficient. So think about a manufacturing plant for an automotive company, right? You go there, there's every single process is standardized, from moving to here to moving to here, putting this part, welding this part, screwing something, and the same thing for a restaurant, McDonald's. Every single part of the restaurant is mapped out so that processes can go smoothly, and the inputs that you do generate an output, which is ultimately get an order in less than X amount of time. The fourth thing is identifying any type of customer requirement. So what does the customer ultimately need? If you know what the customer ultimately needs, your client ultimately needs, then it's going to be easier for you to really put together a step-by-step guides in order to get to the end point. Number 5 is identify a process owner for each process. So usually this is going to be you whenever you're starting, or your operations manager, or your executive assistant, or someone that is in that specific role. So for example, if you're doing an SOP for the sales role, then you know that that is going to be needed to be done by a closer or by an appointment setter or a sales coordinator or whatever that is. Usually SOPs are very, very good for admin stuff, for process-oriented stuff, for things that are repeatable, measurable, attainable, and things that you can just predict. Or for things that you know that if you teach it with an SOP, people are gonna learn it even faster or better. And as a matter of fact, you can do an SOP and how to pick up the phone, how to talk to a person, and ultimately close the deal. SOP to pick up the phone, open up the CRM, make the call, follow a specific framework, follow a specific script, pitch, close. Ultimately, that's an SOP. The next thing is you have to manage the level of detail. So now when creating a process, you have to manage the level of detail. So it means that you have to be as detailed as possible as you can in the checklist. And make sure that it's in a chronological order or in an order that actually makes sense. Here, I'm using Google Doc, but you could be using also ClickUp. And ClickUp allows you to do task by task and subtasks as well. It can also allow you to put dates. It can allow you to put some sort of links or extra things on the other columns, depending on how you actually structure it. You can also put urgency, you can also put owners on that ClickUp. I like using ClickUps to create SOPs. As a matter of fact, I can show you an example of an SOP in ClickUp, but right now we're using Google Docs. The next one, number 7, is use a standardized mapping conventions. What does that mean? So if you are able to standardize how you're going to name things, how you're going to label things, right? It's gonna be easier for people to really understand it. Here, let's go to that part so that it is actually easier for you to understand. So what that means, what you want is for anyone in the organization to be able to pick a process map and understand instantly what is it that they're seeing. So standardize on mapping conventions and formatting of the maps. Mapping symbols, flow direction, page layouts, fonts, titling, and so on. Should be the same from one map to another. Keep the number of flowchart symbols to a minimum. you should be able to create some sort of flow chart. And as you guys can see, Lucid Chart, ClickUp, Figma, all these things can offer flowchart levels that you can actually start mapping things out, right? You should need no more than 6 to keep the maps easy to read. The next one is get agreement on the process. People have to be agreeing on the process. Usually you create that process first and you teach it to someone, but that someone needs to be giving you feedback. So whenever you give an SOP or a process to someone, you ultimately need to tell them, look, you have to tell me feedback because you're gonna see things in the day-to-day that we may need to improve. So if there's something that doesn't make sense, we need to remove a step, add a step, or modify a step, let me know. The number one is you want to ultimately document all of this. Everything that we just talked about, everything that we just went through with your team and everything, you have to create an SOP, and I'm gonna show you how to do an SOP real quick. The 10 one is convey management commitment and train your team. So after you create your SOPs, after you create your documents, you want to ultimately train your people. You have to let them know what you want, the expectations. You have to let them know how they need to do it, right? And anything that might be missing, because one thing that you're gonna know is that probably they're not gonna get it the first time. They probably need to be repeated or trying it more than 7 to 9 times in order to actually get it. As long as they are trained, as long as they have the intention of doing it, right? And the knowledge of doing it, and they know exactly what to expect, you're gonna be good. All right, so let's go and know exactly how to create an SOP. So here's an SOP, how to create an SOP. If you don't know how to create an SOP and you're in business, you're missing out and a big chance of making money or streamlining your processes, which means that you're now gonna be more efficient. Look, guys, there's a lot of tools and softwares out there that actually make your things more efficient, but here, this one is gonna be really good, okay? So it's creating a standard operating procedure. Overview. If you can come in here and see that the objective of this SOP is to guide you through the process of creating an SOP. The SOP can be used for any department in the organization regardless of its operation. If there is a need to connect one SOP with another, include a link. So you can always connect it to another SOP as well in here. Tutorial. Here's a video and I use Loom in order to actually make this video very easy to follow. I'm gonna show you how the video kinda looks like in here. So it's a Loom video, me going over and the standard operating procedure template.
So this is a tutorial.
Actually, going over the video that the document that I just created.
Tutorial of how to create a standard operating procedure. Start.
You see, now you might be thinking this is really redundant, but why did I do it? Let me tell you. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that every time that you create an SOP, you have to make people learn it, right? So how do people learn? People learn by listening, by reading, right? When people ultimately listen, they retain about, 5%? When people read it, they retain about, 10%? When people ultimately read and listen at the same time, they retain about 20%. When people ultimately see a demonstration of it, they retain way more, about 30%. So when you're showing them something, when they're listening, right? So video, listening, and writing, they're gonna retain automatically 30% more, okay? 30%. That's freaking amazing. When people ultimately start discussing it, they retain about 50%. So what that means is that you're gonna have to discuss it and they have to discuss it within them and you have to train them. And when people start applying it, about 70%. When you teach it to someone, you retain about 90%. So ultimately, your team leaders need to do that, need to demonstrate, need to discuss it, need to teach it. They're gonna retain more, and that's how you ultimately create people that teach things to others, and they're gonna retain all this information and they're gonna be able to learn a specific process, which could help them learn a specific skill. All of this goes connected. So here, it goes here. We have a checklist. If you take a look at this here, there is a checklist right in here. So for example, go to File, select New, from Template Gallery, select Standard Operating Procedure Template. 2, list out all the processes all the steps in this process in order from start to finish. Then while doing the actual process yourself, then record your tutorial video, then create your step-by-step guide with screenshots. Note, objective is to eliminate any confusion question, so your team does not need you to take action and complete the process. The guide. Know the process from A to Z, put in the checklist above. And it could be a little bit more detailed, but have a screenshot of it. Go through the steps, just putting a little bit of a screenshot. Now, here, let's say for example, this document right in here ultimately is the template. So if there is a resource, you want to put it up there. Here's a template, and let me tell you that checklists and resources can be put all the way in here. So you can always just copy paste any type of resources, and you can put it in SOP right in here. This is the template of an SOP. I'm gonna be giving it away, all right? Here are some document requirements that you may wanna put in here. So I'm gonna be giving away how to create an SOP. And here, guys, there's gonna be the game changer. If you like this video and if you found anything valuable at all for this, start creating your first SOP, right? I'm gonna put a video here on how to create an SOP separate to this video. Trust me, guys, processes and systems is how you create a business. How you scale a company is through people. So remember that, and if you liked it, subscribe in this YouTube channel, hit the thumbs up so that it helps the YouTube algorithm. I'll see you next time, okay? See you guys.